What's up, airplane collectors? Welcome to a model fighter jet review. It's your host Ray. In today's video, I'll be reviewing the Hobbymaster 1/72 scale FA-18E Super Hornet flying for the United States Navy out of Naval Air Station Fallon in 2020. This aircraft is wearing the paint scheme of Maverick's personal F-18 in the movie Top Gun Maverick. 2 aircraft in total were painted to match this paint scheme. This aircraft, the F-18E Super Hornet, and another F-18F Super Hornet. This aircraft specifically was used to film some of the aerial sequences in the film, while the other aircraft was used to film the actors in the cockpit of the F-18. Both aircraft are now flying for the Blue Angels. In this video, I'll talk about the box, then the model itself, its many accessories, and at the end of the video, I will give my personal opinion about what I think of the model and whether or not I recommend it to other collectors. Due to the sheer amount of accessories this model includes, this will be a particularly long review, so sit back, relax, let's turn and burn. Starting off with the box is a standard issue Hobbymaster 1/72 scale FA-18E box at 27 centimeters lengthwise and height-wise, and 8.5 centimeters wide. I'll show you around the box now, so here's the front. The only thing that's different about this box when compared to other Hobbymaster F-18E boxes is the sticker here with the CGI of the aircraft and some information about it. Here's the bottom, right side, top, left side. That sticker is also present here on the left side. Give you a quick view of it. And here is the back side. Take a moment to read this if you'd like to. Included in the box is the model, fully painted and almost fully assembled, and a wide variety of accessories. I'll go over these in detail later. Also included is a plastic and metal display stand. And here's the aircraft itself. For the majority of this review, I will have the aircraft in the canopy closed, gear extended, no ordnance configuration. However, I will demonstrate what each of the ordnance loadouts looks like later in the video. Before I begin my review, I'm going to give you a quick 360 of the model. Fuselage length is 26 centimeters, wingspan is 19 centimeters, and it's 7 centimeters tall. Accurate to 1/72 scale and pretty darn big. The model is also quite heavy because it is made primarily out of die-cast metal. However, I must make the note that the accessories are not made out of die-cast metal. Those are made out of plastic. However, the model itself is made almost entirely out of die-cast metal. Starting up the review at the front of the aircraft, here we've got the nose section of the plane. Very nicely detailed from the start. We've got lots of panel line detail, all of which is very cleanly and clearly depicted. There's no paint that's filling in any of the details, so it looks good so far. The tip of the nose cone is a little bit of a lighter gray than the rest of the gray on the fuselage. That looks pretty solid. No complaints. Really, the only issue I have up here is you may notice that some of the black paint is poking through the blue stripe here. This is a prominent issue on the panel lines on the left side of the aircraft. However, as you'll see later on the right side, this is not as big of an issue. Aside from that, very nicely detailed up front, and yeah, very impressive so far. So we'll move up to the canopy. So as you can see, this is the E variant of the F-18 Super Hornet, so it's just the single seat. And earlier I mentioned that I'll have this aircraft in the closed canopy configuration. Well, you may have seen the open canopy configuration when I was showing off all of the accessories. So this is a plastic part, and it just comes out like that. And it fits to the aircraft relatively well. You can see that the seams between the aircraft and the canopy piece itself, they're not perfect, but they fit in there pretty well, and I won't complain too much about it. Aligning it isn't too tricky. You just have to give it a little bit of a hard push, and it does the trick. So that's what it looks like removed. And there's actually a lot of detail in there. You can see the control stick, some of the detail for the panel. You can even see that there's a plastic heads-up display in there, which is really cool. Very nicely detailed cockpit, especially considering the size of this aircraft. Well, the detail specifically. Now, here is what the open canopy configuration looks like. Now, you may notice already, if you are familiar with the F-18's anatomy, if you will, that this support bar is in the wrong spot. Well, I believe this support bar is supposed to actually go into this little gap right here, where my pointer is pointing at. However, this part actually arrived broken, and it's incredibly easy to break because this part is also made out of plastic like the closed canopy cover, And yeah, this just sticks out with no form of protection, so it's very easy to break. I was able to glue it back into place, but obviously not at the right angle, so I'm not going to try and mess with it. It was already difficult to fix the first time, and I don't want to mess with it. But overall, this fits on quite nicely, and it allows you to see inside that canopy, which looks really cool. So that is a nice touch. Now, another area I'd like to bring your attention to is directly under the canopy here. Usually the name of the pilot as well as his call sign, his or her call sign, will be painted under the canopy here. In this case, it would be Captain Pete Mitchell, call sign Maverick. However, this isn't the case on this model, and the reason for this is copyright grounds. Hobbymaster couldn't put those titles there, otherwise they would risk legal action from whoever owns the rights to Top Gun Maverick. Now, on the F-18F, I believe Hobbymaster did have decals for the collector to put onto the stripe here in order to have that detail. However, on this one, the decals are not included. So if you want to have that title there, you're probably going to want to order a decal set. However, we do have the 3 F5 markings here, which in Top Gun's world are MiG-28s, and those look pretty good. Moving down to the rest of the top of the fuselage and getting onto the wings, we've got a lot of panel line detail as well as the continuation of the blue and black stripe, all of which looks pretty good. Back towards the rear here, you can see more of that black paint coming through the panel lines of the blue stripe, and that's really all there is. And while it's a small imperfection, it still does kind of bug me when I see it. Now, another thing I'd like to note is the sheer amount of small printed details. There are a ton of little no-step text boxes here. There's one there, there. But yeah, there's a lot of those sprinkled all throughout the wing. Here's the leading edge extension there. Very nicely detailed overall. Over here, you can see on the side of the wing we have a Sidewinder missile. These are permanently attached to the wing. You cannot remove them even if you wanted to. And back end of the wing is pretty nicely detailed as well. Overall, impressive amount of detail here. Here's a look at the rear section of the plane. We've got some aerial features here. I'm not really sure what these are, but those look good. The ends of the stripes are center lined and they look pretty good. And all sorts of printed and molded detail with the panel lines. Overall, this is an incredibly detailed model, and I have no complaints since there are barely any issues with the application of it aside from the paint poking through on the blue stripe. We have some more of that paint poking through here on the right side, but it's really not the biggest issue. Not as big as the ones on the left side. While we're back here, let's talk about the vertical stabilizers. These look pretty good. Here's what the detail on them looks like. Stripes look good. Top Gun logo looks pretty good. On the inside, there isn't anything. It's just painted black. But on the outside, on both sides, we do have the stripe details as well as the logo for Top Gun. So very nicely detailed on the vertical stabilizers as well. So I'll move down the right side of the aircraft. Take note of how there's very little to no issues with the paint poking through on the blue stripe on the right side as opposed to the left side. Now, the underside of the aircraft has plenty of detail as well. So down here we've got two sharp and pointy antennas on either side of the nose. These are very fragile. Be careful, don't break them. And we also have a larger antenna here. Here in the nose, we also have the landing gear for the front landing gear. I'll go over this more in detail later. As we move down, we've got, of course, the leading edge extensions and the huge square-shaped intakes for the engines. On here, we can see plenty of molded detail. We also have a warning sign right here. I don't know what that says. And then we also have the danger jet intake there. Now, these intakes, they don't go back all the way to the fans. They do end at some point, and it's just a block or a wall. It's not really anything impressive. And while they do go back pretty far, if you do look in there, you will notice that they go back and stop at a certain point. However, shadows usually do a good job of concealing that. Like you can see right now, you can't see that at all, so I won't complain about it too much. The undersides of the wings are also very nicely detailed. We've got the lights here on the bottom of the right wing. This one is green, the other one's going to be red on the other side. This looks pretty good, and we also have 3 gaps for hardpoints. We have 2 longer hardpoint options and 1 shorter hardpoint option. I'll go over which attachments can fit where later. And back to the middle of the fuselage, we've got the main landing gear. I'll talk about those in more detail later. And back towards the engine department, more printed details, as well as the Navy logo here. the aircraft's number and type, and some more placards, and then the carrier hook right here. Here is the rear of the engine nozzles. You can see that there is a bit of detail very deep inside of there, so that is a nice addition, although you can't really see all that much. The engine nozzles themselves are painted a metallic brown, or two different metallic browns, which also look pretty good, so I won't complain about it. Very nice work. Now time for accessories. So this aircraft, as you saw earlier, includes quite a few accessories, including aircraft configuration options as well as ordnance and weapons. First I'll go over the configuration options, then I'll go over ordnance and weapons. So the first thing I'd like to talk about is the landing gear. So the landing gear on this model can be configured to be extended or retracted. Right now they're obviously extended. Now in order to have them in the retracted position, you just have to wiggle this out and it comes right out. It's a friction-based attachment, as all attachments for accessories are on this model. There are no magnetic attachments, which I'm not exactly used to as a die-cast airliner collector, but I can deal with. The friction-based attachment for the nose gear is, it's pretty well. It fits in there nice and tight, but it isn't impossible to remove, and you can see that this nose gear is very nicely detailed. The wheels do not roll, but they are made out of rubber, and the nose gear does not pivot. Here are the main landing gear, and the main landing gears, they also do not roll or pivot or anything, but they are also the wheels are made out of rubber. Now, the issue I have with the main landing gear on this model is how exceedingly difficult it is to remove from the model. So you may find on your model that they're pretty hard to move, or to remove, I should say, and my strategy is that I just have to pull at it very carefully. So if I pull on this door here, or if I pull on the gear itself and start wiggling a little bit while pushing against the wing to remove it, that eventually gets it out, but don't pull or push too hard, otherwise you will break these, because like I said, all of the accessories, including the landing gear, are made out of plastic, so they will break under a certain amount of force. Alright, after a bit of a fight, they finally came out, so here's what they look like. They're also very nicely detailed and pretty sturdy. They hold up the model pretty well, and here's what the attachment point looks like. So when you receive for your model, I suggest test fitting this part into the aircraft, and if you find it pretty hard to push into the aircraft, I suggest you stop trying to attach these to the aircraft and you sand down this section here. That's what I did, and while it's still really hard to remove this part, it's not as impossible as it was earlier. And I should also mention that you cannot use the tool included to remove this from the aircraft. You just have to do it by hand, which is quite annoying considering how difficult it is. Now here's what the empty gear bay looks like for the nose gear, and here is the nose gear cover. So this is what it looks like when it's retracted, and back here you'll notice a little bit of a section here that's cut out for the tool to be used to remove the part. So this is also a friction-based attachment, and right here you can see the cavity for where the part attaches to the aircraft with. So I'll demonstrate what this looks like right now. So just gotta sit it in there, give it a bit of pressure, and it sits in there mostly okay. So you can see that the rear section kind of sticks out a little bit, so it's not a perfect attachment, but overall it fits pretty snugly with the rest of the aircraft, so I say it's a decent fit. Now here is the included tool. You can see it's got a little bit of a hook that allows you to reach in there and remove it, so I'm just going to use that, bring it all the way there, and give it a nice little pull, and it comes right on out. Pretty much the same story for the main gear cover. The main gear cover actually fits in there quite nicely, and it's not too tight or too loose. Remember, the side with lesser points like this is towards the front of the aircraft, so we'll just fit that right on in there. I'll push, and just like that, it's in there just fine. Now you'll notice at the rear of this section, there's also an area that appears to not be part or not be normal to the F-18. Now that little section there is actually a display stand hole. That's where part of the display stand goes, and there's also a cover for that, believe it or not. So we're going to stick that right on in there, and it fits the aircraft decently. It's not a perfect fit, and you're supposed to use it only when the gear is extended, but yeah, you can see it fits decently. It won't fall out if you tip it over, but it's still not the best fit in the world. But it does the job if you ever wanted to cover up that display stand hole. Now let's remove the cover for the main landing gear, and I expect the other piece to come out as well. So 1, 2, 3, give it a nice little push, and it comes right on out. And the other one, we can just use our pointer here and it'll come right on out. Other accessories for aircraft configuration include the canopy for the open configuration. I showed this earlier. We also get a pilot figure, which is quite small and it's not the most detailed thing in the world. And worst of all, it doesn't have Maverick's helmet pattern, so that is one thing that you might want to consider. And then lastly, we have the laser guidance pod right here, which attaches to the side of the aircraft. The included figure fits into the aircraft rather tightly. It's a little bit awkward to get him in there, and it requires a steady hand, but once you get it aligned, he fits in there quite nicely. So I'll give him a little push, and I'm pretty sure that's what it's supposed to look like. That's more like it. I kind of had him a little bit too high, so once we put the canopy on there, it fits just fine. Now the laser attachment fits into this little groove right here, or you can't even see that, but it's a small attachment point right there. That's where the laser fits to. That's much better. And the forward direction is the direction of the rounded end right here. That's actually where the laser aimer is. And it's pretty hard to fit onto the fuselage, and even once fit onto the aircraft, it's not a good fit at all. Let's put it on there, and yeah, see, look, it doesn't want to even fit in there. And there you go. So after a bit of fighting with it, it finally fit onto the aircraft. And there's still noticeable seam lines and a noticeable joint between the attachment and the fuselage, but it still fits in there. You might want to consider gluing this. I'm not sure how that would affect the rest of the aircraft, but yeah, it is a attachable and removable accessory. Up next for accessories, we have 4 fuel tanks. We have 2 wing hardpoint mounted fuel tanks right here, and then 2 centerline fuel tanks. Only one of these can be fit on the aircraft at a time, and the only difference between these two is that this one is just a black fuel tank, and this one has the Top Gun logo on it. So we'll attach it to the aircraft right there, and it fits just fine. The wing-mounted fuel tanks can go into any one of the 2 longer hardpoint attachments on the wing. It can go here or here. However, on most loadouts, I've seen the fuel tanks are usually fitted on the innermost hardpoint, so I'll demonstrate what that looks like. These wing-mounted fuel tanks are not directional, so it does not matter which side you put the fuel tank on, you'll get the same result with either one. And that's what it's supposed to look like. Up next, we have the fireworks. I believe all of these are AIM-120 AMRAAM missiles. I'm not 100% sure because I'm not a U.S. Navy or U.S. military aircraft weapons expert. But we have 2 single-mounted missiles, 2 dual-mounted missiles, and then 1 singular missile that mounts to the fuselage. The single-mount missiles are the only accessory that can fit on the outermost hardpoint of the wing, and here's what they look like. They're the only ones small enough to fit there, and that's where they're supposed to go. You could realistically fit them onto the other hardpoints, although it would be a bit harder to align them, and I don't believe that's 100% accurate. The dual-mounted missiles can go on any of the 2 innermost hardpoints. They can go on the middle hardpoint or the innermost hardpoint. From what I've seen, the fuel tanks go on the innermost hardpoints, while weapons go on the middle hardpoint as such. This is what it's supposed to look like. And last but not least, we have that singular AIM-120 that goes into the fuselage. It has 2 mounting pegs right here, and those go into 2 holes in the fuselage here and here. So we'll put that in there. It's a little bit hard to fit, but once you get the alignment and give it a good push, then it fits in there just fine. And that is what it looks like. And last but not least, we have the Stones, 2 GBU-24 precision-guided bombs. These are the same type of bombs that the aircraft in Top Gun Maverick used to attack the unsanctioned nuclear power plant. And this is exclusive to the F-18E model released by Hobbymaster. The F-18F model released previously does not have these bombs. I believe it has a set of smaller JDAMs. As such, these bombs can only be fitted to the 2 innermost hardpoints. It can either be fitted here or here. On the movie and in other loadouts, I've seen the bombs fitted to the middle hardpoint. So what I believe the pattern is that fuel tanks go to the innermost hardpoint, weapons go to the middle hardpoint, and those single mount missiles go to the outermost hardpoint. The last and final accessory is a 3-piece display stand, and 2 pieces are made out of plastic, that being the base and the support part, and then the main stand itself is made out of metal. So this display stand fits the model quite nicely. It is a bit of a loose fit. However, as you can see as I'm shaking it, the model is fit securely on the stand, so it isn't at risk of falling over. And regardless of which configuration you have the model in, it looks pretty darn good on the stand. It has a slight angle upwards, but it's got no turn angle, and it looks pretty solid, and it fits the model well. And here is a staring contest I hope to never find myself in. I've attached most of the ordnance options on here, the only difference being on the left side of the aircraft, to the right side of your screen, I attached one of the GBU-24s, and on the right side of the aircraft, the left side of your screen, I attached the dual missile attachment there. So overall, everything up here looks good. Gear balance seems to be symmetrical, wing flex symmetrical. It does point down a little bit, which is accurate to the F-18. Printing with the stripe looks symmetrical. And you'll notice that the bombs, missiles, and the fuel tanks are kind of pointed outwards. This is accurate to the F-18. I'm not sure why they mount the weapons like that, presumably due to preventing them from recontacting the aircraft, but they're accurate, so all looks good from here. That was one very long review, but at long last, we're at the end. Now time for my personal opinion and recommendation. This is a very nicely detailed model with a wide array of configuration options. The configuration options is something I greatly appreciate, as you can display your model to your liking, whether you're more into displaying the weapons and showing how this aircraft can be armed to the teeth, or you'd like to just appreciate the aircraft itself. There's a configuration for everyone. And the details are pretty solid, quality control is pretty good, and while these parts are very fragile, if handled by someone with a bit of experience, you'll be just fine. So, therefore, I definitely recommend this model to any other collectors who want one. And I imagine the two-seat variant, also released by Hobbymaster prior to this one, is just as high quality as this one, if not better. However, the disadvantage of ordering that one is that, yes, it's the two-seat variant, and you don't get the stones with this one. So, if you want those, you might as well order both. I'm considering it myself, although I probably shouldn't. Well, that's the end of my review. Thank you so much for watching to the end. I know this was a really long one, and that's all I've got for you guys today. Like, comment, and subscribe. Happy collecting. Stay safe. See you next time.